Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. It is again, we say, that the energy which is presented to this place is pure. Again, we say there is no agenda. There is no manipulation. There's no plan to capture your will. Only to open your heart. And that's not an agenda. Human beings search for the Creator. And they do so almost from the moment that they're born. Because there's something missing. I'll call it the tune, the song that they've heard for eons on the other side of the veil, my side. It's such a shock to be born into this planet in the human body, to suddenly have the cellular structure presented to you yet again. Such a shock to the system that is the soul. But the thing that is most obvious from the one side to the other is the feeling that you are alone. And you spend so much time looking for the missing piece. And you can call it whatever you want. Oh, some of you have discovered, perhaps in your houses of worship, what that feels like to sit, to kneel, and to call upon the power of God, and to have it wash over you. And you just want to sit there, don't you? Some of you in your meditations have the same thing. Beautiful it is. Where you can sit and be in touch, you think, for a little while. Something physical you do to make a connection. And in those brief moments, all is well. And in those moments, you feel that time where you touch the face of God a little bit. And when you do, you hear the music, and all is well. You spend a lot of time trying to recreate something that is missing. Humanity has always done this. I know why. For the music never stops for me. I will tell you, as Kryon, I cannot imagine being without it. The celestial choirs that sing in light on my side of the veil is what you're used to, because you are eternal. You have spent eternity in both directions listening to it. And it's completely disconnected when you arrive. Frustrating it must be to the human being, to the soul, because it's not there. And so we begin the teaching. And we begin by saying this: there is a new energy on this planet. And this energy seeks to now activate pieces and portions of your soul energy, which we call DNA. That part of your body which is both in 3D and multi-D, where the higher self resides. And as you activate the energy from the tools that are new, the realignment of the grid, the establishment of the crystalline grid, the activation of the cycle of Gaia that the Mayans predicted, all of these things, now you stir in the energy of the harmonic convergence, all of which gives you permission to begin a process that is graduation, that is mastery. We said it to you last night. These are the mastery tools, the allowance for you to understand a quantum state that is you. And in the process, some of you will begin to hear the music. I promise. I promise. And it won't be something that you have to sit and meditate to accomplish, only for a moment or two. Because DNA, when activated, stays that way. You don't turn it on and turn it off. Oh, it is a complex puzzle, this. And I challenged my partner this night to be careful and go slow so that it is directed properly, explained succinctly. What follows is going to be transcribed into a book. And so these are instructions my partner is hearing for the first time. For the DNA book is in progress, and this should be a chapter. For this is the practical part of something that heretofore has only been academic. The 12 layers of DNA, what they're called, what their names are, what their purpose is. Oh, now there is more to this story, and I choose to give it to you here in this great place, this place of many languages, this place of recent freedom, this place that is the Baltics. There's a reason why we reveal it to you. And part of that reason is because this is not a Western message. It is a universal message. So that my partner or anyone else does not believe that the important things are only revealed in certain places. They'll be revealed everywhere. For the family is the family. And they sit before me now, listening to many languages, but feeling one language, the third language of love. It's difficult to begin the message, for there is so much going on in the room. The expectations. In this place, there are 13 healings that have begun. They started when you walked in yesterday. Did you feel them? I know who's here. Despite the message, some of you will leave completely different than you came. One message is being given about DNA, and other messages are being given in love profoundly, at a state of mind, a state of emotion, a quantum state where literally the angels walk between the seats and touch those who want to be touched. It's a good time to see the colors on the stage, for those of you who can see them, for they are here in grand fashion. Take a look. This is the energy you came for. And one of them is green, spreading out in this place, this big place. And some of you needed to hear that. I'm not here to ignore why you came. So let this teaching begin. There have been questions by those who would attend meetings like this one, after channelings like this one, where they say to my partner, to the hosts, to anyone who will listen, they say, well, what's all of this about DNA? Why does Kryon talk about DNA? Why doesn't he talk about angelic things, esoteric things? Why doesn't he tell us what we came for? But no, he wants to talk about chemistry. And if you are one that has said that, you still don't understand, do you? In your cellular structure are the tools of mastery. And they're not invisible. They are part of the cellular structure, which is being studied in a whole different way by science today. It is in the DNA, you know. The instruction sets for mastery are in the DNA. You have hundreds of trillions of copies of the double helix in your body. And I've given you the names of the energies within them. And now we're going to speak of some specific ones, a set of them. And before we speak of the set that is being activated simply by the energy that is here and by the humans who are giving permission, before we do that, we have to once again give you some of the scenarios that you must understand. Human beings want lists. They would like to compartmentalize everything that is said so that they can make a metaphor in their mind on how things work. DNA does not work in 3D. Therefore, you cannot compartmentalize or metaphorize 3D. Here's what I mean. Even in the most complex machine on the planet, one that may have tens of thousands of parts, the parts always do the same thing. It may be extremely complex. You may have something 1,000 times more complicated than a Swiss watch. But the spring and the wheels, they're still springs and wheels. They do the same thing in a complex way, but not DNA. It is not a machine. You must think of DNA as being totally and completely interactive with itself. When one part changes, the part next to it also changes. You cannot see certain layers as always doing the same thing. When we gave the explanation of the 12 layers, we were careful not to tell you what each one did all the time, only give you their purpose and their energy or their storage capacity. You'll see that in a moment. Some hints about what they're for. But as they work together, each one morphs. That is to say, it changes depending upon what the other does. So you might say you have an engine where all of the parts continue to shift and change depending upon what the engine needs. Complex it is, quantum it is. In a quantum state, there is no time. In a quantum state, there is no actual place where anything is. For quantum mechanics dictates that any matter, if you want to call it that, or any energy, if you want to call it that, is everywhere together all the time. Imagine something so complex. Now, imagine that it's duplicated hundreds of millions of times in your body. There's something else. Even before we begin to list these parts that are the new tool set, there's something else. And the reason my partner is hesitating is because I'm showing it to him, and there are no words. There's no science. It's new. In order for DNA to work properly, in order for it to do all of the things that we speak of esoterically and quantumly, 100, 200, 300 trillion pieces of DNA must all know something at the same time. There has to be a communication that takes place in the microscopic DNA of your toenail at the same time the longest hair on your head. And they both have to know about it instantly. Trillions of pieces must agree, must have one energy absorption of consciousness. There is no word in science. There is a word in my partner's language. I'll give it to you. A confluence of energy. Confluence in English truly means a melding of energies together so that they become something else, a oneness. That is a new kind of communication. Science doesn't see it yet, but at some level, they know it must exist. For how else can the human body do what it does? That many parts. Cellular structure is unique. And the DNA creates certain parts of the body that have instruction sets to do specific things. You call them STEM things. But DNA is identical all over the body. It's not specific. You don't have toenail DNA and hair DNA and heart DNA. You've just got your own specific DNA. Trillions of copies of the same blueprint for you. And they must talk to each other, or you wouldn't be a human. How do they do it? No name in science, truly, has been given to the process of communication between DNA strands, loops. It will. It will. But let us study now how the communication is done. And now the puzzle starts to come together. For the magnetic master is before you. And you think it has to do with the grid? It has to do with DNA. For as my partner indicated in the lecture series earlier today, there's something you should know about DNA, and that is, it is magnetic. Each loop of DNA has a magnetic field which overlaps the loop next to it, which overlaps the loop next to it. Hundreds of trillions of overlaps equals one consciousness, a magnetic imprint that the human carries around with them, and you have called it an aura. That's how it's created. An aura is not a magnetic field, and you will not see an aura with magnetic equipment. An aura is the result of a confluence of DNA communication in the human body. There's that word again. A melding of energy to create a quantum field not measurable by anything on the planet yet. I tell you this because you have to understand that what happens in DNA happens all at once with every part. Think of the coordination, the puzzle. If you're going to have some kind of esoteric activation that is new of your DNA, think of what must take place. Hundreds of trillions of parts all receiving it at once. What do you think happens to you? What do you think happens to you at that moment when you realize this is a real communication from Spirit? Can you feel the love of God surge through this room? The reality that is here. That what you are getting comes through that veil purely into your heart, into your emotion, into your mind, properly, appropriately, without a program. There will be those who understand what is to come, and there will be those who don't. And that is why it is being transcribed the way it is in real time for you, so you can revisit it when you need to. That is why it's being recorded the way it is, so you can review it and recall it. But nothing will ever give you this again, and that is you are in a quantum state with me, dear family, right this moment. Take advantage of it. For in this place, there are quantum energies walking between the aisles. Some of them are touching you right now, and you can feel them. Okay, I'll identify it if you want me to. There are some of you right now who have lost loved ones recently, friends recently, and I want to tell you, they're here, for they're in a quantum state just like me. Some of you can smell them, some of you can feel them touching you, some of you. And it's beautiful. And you might say, well, why would they do that? Would they do that to make us sad? And I tell you this, they do it so that you'll know that you are eternal. That death is only a shifting of energy. That's all it is. Moves from one thing to another. Old soul, you know it, don't you? They're here to touch you, so you know they're still around. It's done in love. It's done joyfully. Let us talk about the DNA. This now, my partner, is critical. You get the numbers correct, you get the purposes correct, and you teach this in a fashion that there will be understanding. I would like to tell you that there are 5 layers that are being activated to a point where great gifts will be yours. But I would be wrong. For one of those 5 is always being activated. So are there really 4 plus 1? Does it count that way? Already we're in trouble because we are linearizing the numbers. But we're going to do it anyway. Because there is no way I can communicate quantum things to you unless I reduce them to a 3-dimensional construct for teaching. And so I will. 5 layers are involved in the gifts of this age. Specifically, 5. And yet you might say you can't ignore number 1, for it's the 3D layer, and you'd be right. But I'm still going to stick to 5. And their numbers are number 2, number 6, the combination of 7 and 8, and number 9. I will explain, I will list them in review. This is esoteric teaching. It is complex. It is beautiful. It is new. And it starts to explain something for you. Something you need to know. Something you can do that you've not been able to do before. It starts to explain the unexplainable. It's interesting. Already we're into numerology. For if you take layer 2, layer 6, layer 7, 8, and 9, and you add them together, you're going to get an energy in numerology of 5. And 5 means universally change. Get ready for change. Now, what my partner calls the disclaimer. None of these things are going to happen to you if you don't want them. These are gifts for light workers. If they want to open the door, if they want to push upon the quantum parts of themselves through a consciousness of choice. And if they don't, nothing whatsoever will happen. The good doctor with the semi-Lithuanian name explained it well. He says DNA is very much like the most advanced jet airplane ever made. But the energy on the planet Earth, which literally talks to your DNA through the magnetic field, has always been low. Always. Compared to mastery, compared to the prophets, your DNA has always been of low energy. And therefore that wonderful jet plane has simply taxied up and down the runway for all of humanity, all the time, all through history. And now it is changing. That's the message. It always has been. Let us itemize what is different. Layer 2 of DNA, when you compartmentalize it into energies, when you put it in 3D for teaching, layer 2 has been described as the human being's life lesson. Now, it's important that you understand what a life lesson is. It's in your DNA. You come in with it. It is something that has been constructed due to the Akash. That is to say, your life lesson is only something that has been put there based upon what has happened to you in what you call past lives. Therefore, already it's hooked to your Akashic DNA record, which happens to be layers 7 and 8. Already we're interacting, are we not? No layer works alone. But let us return to number 2. For those among you might say, life lesson sounds like karma. It isn't. It has nothing to do with karma. It is an energy placed upon you, which some have called purpose. What is it that drives you? Have you come in and the cells sing with a message that say, I don't ever want to be alone? What do you think your life lesson is? To be alone. Doesn't seem fair, does it? That's the energy of the life lesson. What is it that the past lives that you have had have put together as a puzzle that you have not yet accomplished in the energies of being a human being? Whatever those are, become your life lesson. There are many of you in this room who have a very similar life lesson, and when I tell you what it is, you'll know why. For generations, the Baltics have had humanity which was defined for you. You are this, you are that. You will think this way, you will think that way, and you know of what I speak. And so there are so many life lessons in this room that when you're born, it is this: never let anyone define you again. Let the freedom and the independence that is yours countrywide, area-wide, be reflected in your thinking. Do you know what that does to a spiritual life lesson? It lets it soar. Don't be surprised if there's an awakening here that is spiritual based upon this. Independence of being defined. A life lesson which a group has together. That's the way it works. That's layer 2. And it's being changed. It's being modified. It's being altered. And you will say, well, how is it being altered? The life lesson must be the life lesson. I will tell you this. It's being changed in its ability to be manifested faster. Stay with me. The layer that is always involved in everything is number 6. Number 6. Do you know the numerology on 6? Look it up. For we told you this. Number 6 is the higher self. Oh boy. If you haven't heard this before, you need to hear it now. Where is the higher self? Well, now, based upon the words, it has to be higher. It's not. The only part that is higher is your perception of vibration. It makes you want to worship it. Did you realize that so many of you go into the houses of worship so you connect with yourself? And you kneel and you hear the music and you pray to yourself. I am not being blasphemous. I am giving you core information of the way it works. For that is your perception of God. The higher self, that grand angel, the golden one, that piece in part which is connected to the other side of the veil, which is your core soul, always seems to look like God to you. And it's simply you. And it's in your DNA. And you feel it. And you'd like to be connected to it all the time, wouldn't you? And until this energy developed, it required that you do something, change a consciousness for a little while in meditation or in prayer. Not now. What about a 100% continuous connection to the higher self? Well, now, Kryon, if I had that, I would be like a master. Exactly. Exactly. And what keeps you from thinking such a thing is possible, dear human being? Is it a little too grand for you? It is not. You don't know what it means. What it means is this. All is well. All the time. A feeling of purpose of life. Oh, the challenges come and go. That's just life. The love of God is always in your heart, always connected. That's starting to change. Layer 6 has to be involved in every single tool set I will ever describe to you. That's the one that when you go counting up the layers, you'll say, well, it's always involved all the time. So do you count it or do you not count it? I'll tell you it doesn't really matter. Because the only counting that is being done is as we teach. So you have layer 2, which is the life lesson, and layer 6, which is the higher self, involved in this tool set. Now come the 2 that are critical. The 2 that I'm going to give you now are the most important human DNA energies on the planet. They will always be the most important. They drive the engine of karmic purpose. They drive the engine of life lesson. And they relate to layer 6, the higher self. Listen. There are only 2 DNA energy groups, layer 4 and 5, which we will not discuss today, and layers 7 and 8. 7 and 8 are married together. You might say, well, why is that? Why didn't you just call them one layer? For emphasis. You needed to hear how big this is in order to understand. For layers 7 and 8 are what we have called the Lemurian layers. They're the creation layers. They're your Akashic record. That is to say, the record of every single lifetime you've ever had on the earth. Everything you've ever done. All the accomplishments, all the talents that you have learned, and the spiritual jar of knowledge that you have picked up along the way is in layers 7 and 8. We have given you channel after channel explaining this energy to you. I'll say it again. In your DNA, there is spiritual knowledge that you have learned for eons. How many past lives do you think you have been in, old soul? You sit here with no proof that you have been in any past lives, but you intuitively know, old soul, that you have, don't you? Oh, you do. I know who's here. You can't deny it. And along the way, you've learned what you know now. Along the way, you've picked up the pieces and parts of spiritual purpose of learning. You made all the mistakes you needed to make. And it fills up the knowledge in the spiritual jar in your DNA. And in you come this time around as the human being who sits in the chair in this room. Now I ask you, have you opened that jar yet? Or are you going to make all the mistakes again? Well, I know the answer you'd like to give, so I'll tell you. You need to know this. In that spiritual jar, in those layers of DNA called the Akashic Record, is lifetimes of knowledge. And should you choose to open it with intent, out will come shamanic energy. You'll be so much wiser for doing that. Okay, I've just described one of the attributes of the first gift. The ability to have spiritual wisdom immediately. So that you will know your purpose, know your life lesson, begin to hear the music, feel the love of God in your life, start a process of connecting just by opening the spiritual jar. That's a big one, isn't it? It will lead you into what you need to know. It will lead you into synchronicities for the manifestation of what you're here for. Those who would open their spiritual jars will also have knowledge of what the courses are in the new energy that they need to take. For those are new. Those will help enhance what else I'm going to tell you. It all fits together. Now let me tell you about an interaction that you don't suspect. We will now return to layers 7 and 8, and we will look at layer 6, the higher self. What is it you think is important about past lives? I'll give you 2 attributes to discuss that are not new, but that are germane, that is, that they relate to this discussion. Number 1, there is no such thing as a past life. Put that in your notes. For it is a quantum state, DNA is, therefore you cannot use a time reference. What then is a past life, Kryon? Didn't I live it in the past? Oh, in 3D you might have, but it lives in your DNA as a current life energy. What does that mean, Kryon? I'll give you it to. I'll give this to you in a way that you can understand it. Easy. What if you were a great painter 300 years ago? Did you know it's still there? Well, Kryon, I can't even draw. I see. And you've made up your mind. And you will say to me, no, I've tried and I can't. And I say to you, you've tried in 3D. What if you went into meditation and talked to your cellular structure and said, I would like to pull upon that lifetime in which I could paint. I'm going to tell you something that you're going to get. Slowly, with intent to pull upon that talent, you'll start to draw. Colors will start to appear in a way they didn't before. You'll know what goes with what. My partner knows this is true, for he has pulled upon his Akash in order to do some of the things I've asked him to do. I'm getting ahead of myself. So your Akashic record is current, not past. Make a note of it. Now, how does that relate to your higher self? I will tell you. When you look at a past life, as you call it, let us say it was hundreds of years ago, and you're in some kind of a past life regressor's office, and they tell you you were someone else, and they give you information about who that might have been, and they can do that, for it is written in your Akash. How do you feel? Do you feel connected to it, or do you feel apart from it? Well, here's what I want to tell you. The higher self, number 6, was the same higher self then as it is now. You have a connection. There is an inner activity to your Akashic record. Your higher self was all of them. The one you have now as your higher self, that piece of you which is so precious, was the same one every single time. Hundreds of lifetimes, same higher self. You know what that means? You got a friend who was there. And that's going to play into the next thing I want to tell you. This gets complicated. I know we're drawing this out. This is important that you hear. In your Akashic record are attributes that you need, dear human being. This time, right now, in this new age, you need to have patience. Did I just hit a nerve? You need to be able to wait. And you might say, well, I'm an impatient person. Why don't you go into the Akash, ask your higher self which lifetime. Your higher self is not going to give you a number. Your higher self is going to go get it and make you a patient person. Kryon, I can change my attributes of my personality. That's what this is about. That's the new tool. Oh, it goes beyond that. How would you like to be slow to anger? How would you like to have a personality that never goes into drama or fear? How many lifetimes have you had to choose from? You can go get it. It's there. It lives in your DNA. That's why it was stored there. Lemurian? Now go get it. Mining the Akash is what we have called this, the new tool of mastery. You go get the pieces and parts that are you, that you lived, that you deserved. What have you learned in this life? If I gave you time, if I gave you all evening, would you then start to enumerate what you've learned in this lifetime as a woman, as a man, as a human? And you'd say, well, I need a lot more than one evening to write that down. Well, now multiply it by several hundred lives. And you've got a library. You've got a storehouse. You've got an immense amount of experience. And it's all now. It's all you. There's a human being to my left. He's the maestro. Let me tell you something about him. When he was born, he knew how to play the piano. Did you know that? He might say he took piano lessons, but he really didn't. I'll tell you something about him. He knew how to play the piano. He knew how to compose. The songs were in his head, for he wasn't finished with the last lifetime. He didn't learn to play the piano. He learned to shape his hands as they grew up so he could reach the keys and continue what he already knew. He's mined the Akash automatically. Have you heard of those child prodigies who could paint like a master? They're around, you know. Don't you wonder how that occurred? Now I've just told you. For their past life and their current life is so transparent, they come in and they just pick up where they left off. Now some of you have done this in other ways, because what you've gone through in a past life was fearful. And you've come in with the same fear. There are some who even say you're cursed with an energy and you can never get above it. I will tell you, that is in your Akash. And you brought it in, a fear that's so strong it affects your life lesson, your higher self, and all of your Akash. Isn't it time to get rid of it? And you can. You can reach right there into those energized layers of all of those lifetimes and pick out the one that had the hero, self-assured, courageous, loving, peaceful, healthy. Have you noticed I didn't give you the 5th layer yet? Now I will. Number 9. We've defined it as the healing layer. Now in 3D, you get very excited. You say, well, I want that one. As though you could reach in and pick it. You can't. They're interactive, remember? I've said this before. When you sit before a bowl of soup, you can't reach in and pick out the salt. You can't do it with DNA either. It's interactive. It's the flavor of the DNA that you taste, that you smell. How would you like to change the flavor of who you are, of who you think you are? How would you like to pick up the mastery? The tools are here. The tools are here. Layer 9 is called the healing layer, not because it heals the body. We never said that. It heals the Akash. Now we revealed some secrets. All of these layers work together. Some of them have laid dormant for all of humanity's time on the planet, ready to be activated when the Earth's energy reached a certain point that it's at now. I speak to a group of people who know what it's like to be confined in an old energy and suddenly have release and have an independent spirit. It is why I chose to give the message to you here first, because you can relate to the expansion of consciousness, to the joy of release, to the idea that anything is possible because you are on your own for the first time. You can choose what you want to do with it. Now you know why I'm giving it here, don't you? Layer 9 heals the Akash. What does that mean, Kryon? It means you have the ability to go into your own Akashic record and sort it. In your own way, you can put the good stuff on top. Now that's very 3D. And that's why I said it that way. Have you come into this place with a human body that has something wrong with it? Kryon, I have a predisposition for a disease. And my parents had it and my sister had it. I might get it. No, you're not going to believe this. I want you to feel the purity of this message. I want you to feel the love in which it's given. For I'm giving you things that sound outlandish, that sound impossible, that only the masters who walked the earth could do. I'm going to tell you right now, dear human being, that you can sort into your own Akashic record and find the purest DNA that was ever yours, and pick it up and place upon you the attributes of health. That's what Layer 9 is all about, healing the Akash. You mean I can heal myself? Oh, yes. Through balance. All of these things you want, I know you do. That is why you're here, and you're poised, ready for me to tell you how. And it's easy, and it's difficult, depending upon how much you believe this. Is this a real communication or is it not? And if you're sitting there saying it's only a man in a chair, have a nice life, because your DNA is going to remain dormant. You're going to have to start expanding your consciousness to include the things that are unseen. Can you feel the love of God here? If you can, it's a good beginning. I'll tell you this, if you can feel this message, you can accomplish it. It doesn't happen all at once. I'll give you the method. Each one of you is unique on the planet. Each one has a life lesson which is unique. Each one has a life that is unique as lived in the past. Your Akashic record is like no one else's. Your higher self, that's the one I know. So why not sit down in a quiet moment, in purity, and say to Spirit, I would like these things. I give permission to activate the things that needed to be activated in my life to accomplish the things I came for. I want to have joy in my life. Find the joy in the Akash, for I deserve it. I earned it. I've had joyful lives. I want self-esteem, because I don't have much. And the higher self will go find the warrior on the battlefield who knows who they are and stands tall among human beings, not with a conceit, but with an assurance of personality. They know who they are. For the one who wants to write the book, go find the orator and the author. They're there. For the one who wants spiritual knowledge, go find the spiritual jar shaman. There's 5 layers. Life lesson, higher self, 2 Lemurian layers, and the healing layer. These are the gifts in this age. Interdimensional they are. And I cannot close this message at this point in time without now asking you to throw away the numbers. You're not allowed now to see them as separate. I want you to see them as a core of light that pulsates, a doorway. I want to tell you about that doorway of activation. It pulsates with the music of the other side of the veil. If you were to push on that light in your meditations with pure intent, what you're going to find is the hand of the Creator reaching out to you, because the Creator wants to be found. Did you know that? Were you told that the road to find God would be difficult, that you would have to suffer, that God doesn't really care? Nothing is further from the truth. For the Creator wants to be found, because the Creator is family. When you push upon the door, you're going to have help. It is not a task that you have to do alone. It is a cooperation. It is a partnership. I'm going to use the word again. DNA is a partnership. There's a shift happening. And in 3 dimensions, it is filled with change and fear, anxiety, uncertainty. Whether it's the weather or the economy, or whether it's family or friends, or even your job. That's the shift. And then there's another shift going on. All the tools to let you handle it. All of them. You've deserved these things. Mining the Akash. That's what we're speaking of. The healing that is there. All of these things are wrapped up in what the teacher, Peggy, is calling the lattice. The personal attributes of a human being that surround them so much that you can actually read them. The DNA is only the physical vehicle of a quantum state. A quantum state is everywhere. This is going to be tough for you to understand, human being. But there are pieces and parts of your DNA right now that are all over the universe. God knows who you are, oh quantum one. If you start activating these pieces and parts, your lattice will change color. Did you know that? Oh, we'll leave it to Peggy to tell you about that. There's new information, there are new energies, there are new tools, all related to this. And they started years ago, as much as 20 years, in order to prepare you to sit in a place where you'll have help. All that my partner has been through and all the stages he has sat upon has prepared him for this moment where he can begin the teaching and write the book about the DNA of the human being. Spectacular it is. Lemurian. That's the message for today. Give it in love, give it in purity. To a group that would really appreciate it. Expansion of consciousness. Permission to be your own boss. Change your life. Find the things you need to find. That's what the message is today. Oh, dear one, we're ready to leave. And we've said it before, the hardest thing we do is leave. The part that comes through my partner doesn't want to go, you see. Because I'm linked to him in that way. And he feels it. But the part that is on the other side of the veil, which is quantum, never leaves. And it'll walk out the door with you if you choose. Holding the hand of your higher self if you choose. What a gift. What an energy. Indeed. There are those who said this would never happen, that humanity would stay static. They would never move. They would never evolve. They would never graduate. And they were stuck. And all that changed in 1987. So many of you are here, responsible for it, and you don't even remember it. Much happens on the other side of the veil that involves you. Some of you are sitting in the chairs because of it. And if so, you know of what I speak. So go from this place, light worker, with this information. Self-change, activation, through intent. Begin the process and watch the differences in your life. There are so many who sit here who have already done this, and they didn't even know how or what, but they're different than they were. Now you know what they've done. Now you know how they've done it. I am Kryon. I am in love with humanity. I am swirling in an energy of appreciation as I wash your feet. That such a thing could be. That I might bring you this kind of message. Finally. Finally. Congratulations, dear humanity, for you're on your way. With free choice, let it be that you would leave this place enlightened past the point at which you arrived. With free choice, let it be that you would go from this place ready to do things that perhaps you were unaware you could do. With free choice, spread the light of this message and of who you are. Peace of God. I invite you to hear the music. And so it is.